If you've noticed that you've stopped putting up with certain people, and you didn't even make a conscious decision about it, you're not imagining it. Something shifted inside you. You just don't know exactly when. You used to tolerate the friend who always canceled last minute, the family member who talked over you at dinner, the colleague who took credit for your ideas and smiled while doing it. You used to show up anyway. You used to soften yourself to fit the room. You used to explain, justify, and apologize for things that weren't your fault. And now, you don't. Most people call this becoming cold. Some call it bitterness. A few will say you've changed, and they won't mean it as a compliment. But here is the why behind that shift. Your nervous system is doing something it took decades to learn, and once you understand what that is, you'll stop calling it intolerance. You'll start calling it information. When women over 45 start pulling back from people, they are told a very specific story about themselves. The story is that they've become difficult, that patience is a virtue and they're running low, that relationships require compromise and maybe they've forgotten that. That story is wrong. And if you keep believing it, you'll keep second-guessing a signal your body has been trying to send you for years. You'll keep apologizing for a boundary you were never supposed to explain. And you'll keep spending energy on people who are never going to match your efforts. What's really happening has nothing to do with bitterness. It has everything to do with pattern recognition. And there are 7 things your nervous system has learned without your conscious permission that are quietly changing who you let close to you and why. First, your nervous system stopped being polite. When you were younger, your nervous system was optimistic. Not because you were naive, because it was learning. Every time you walked into a difficult situation and survived it, your brain filed that away. Every time someone disappointed you and you recovered, your nervous system logged it. You built what researchers call a stress tolerance buffer, the neurological capacity to absorb discomfort and keep moving. But the reality is that buffer has limits. And somewhere around your mid-40s, for most women, the buffer stops expanding and starts selecting. A 2019 study from the University of California found that as women age, their prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for emotional regulation, becomes more efficient. It gets faster at identifying threat patterns, faster at flagging inconsistencies between what someone says and how they make you feel, faster at recognizing the specific emotional signature of people who cost more than they contribute. That's not cynicism. That's a brain that has finally processed enough data to stop guessing. When your body tenses before someone enters a room, when you feel tired before a phone call even starts, that's not anxiety. That's decades of data arriving as a physical sensation. You're not becoming intolerant. You're becoming accurate. Second, you stopped performing emotional labor for free. There's a name for what women do when they manage other people's feelings, smooth over tension, and make everyone in a room feel comfortable at the expense of their own comfort. It's called emotional labor. And most women over 45 have been performing it, unpaid and unacknowledged, for their entire adult lives. This is the part of the story people usually skip over. Emotional labor has a cumulative cost. Researchers Arlie Hochschild, who first named this phenomenon in the 1980s, and more recently Emily and Amelia Nagoski in their work on burnout, both found the same thing. Chronic emotional labor doesn't just exhaust you. It changes your tolerance for performing it again. Your nervous system starts to recognize the setup before the scene even starts. The friend who calls only when she needs something. The dinner conversation, where you already know you'll spend it managing someone else's mood. The family member whose presence requires you to monitor your own reactions in real time. You feel it before the first word is spoken. That feeling, that low, quiet dread, is not personality. It's your nervous system telling you that the cost-to-return ratio on this relationship has never balanced. And you've run out of credit. Stopping is not abandonment. It's accounting. Third, your body learned to trust itself. There's a concept in neuroscience called interoception, your body's ability to sense its own internal state. heart rate, tension in the chest, the slight nausea before a conversation you don't want to have, the way your shoulders drop when someone leaves the room. Research from the 2010 onward has shown that interoceptive accuracy, that is how well you can read your own body's signals, improves with age. Not declines, improves. This is counterintuitive. We're told aging means decline. But in this specific area, older women are better, not worse, at knowing what their body is communicating. They just haven't always been given permission to trust it. When you were 25 and your gut said something was wrong with a person, you probably talked yourself out of it. You gave the benefit of the doubt. You explained away the feeling. At 45, you've run enough of those experiments to know how they end. The gut feeling that turned out to be right. The boundary you didn't hold and paid for. The person you gave another chance who used it the same way they used the last one. Your body kept the data. And now it delivers the conclusion faster before your conscious mind has finished being polite. This is not anxiety. This is calibration. If this is landing for you, if you recognize something in your own body that you didn't have language for until now, subscribe. We are naming all of it here. Fourth, you stopped needing approval to justify your feelings. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from trying to get someone to understand why you're hurt. You explain. They reframe. You explain again. They minimize. You look for the right words, the right evidence, the right delivery, as if the right combination will finally make them see it. This pattern has a name in relational psychology. DARVO, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. It's a documented response pattern used by people who cannot or will not take accountability. And it works by forcing you to waste so much energy defending your feelings that you lose sight of the actual problem. Women over 45 are done playing this game, not all at once, not cleanly, but gradually something shifts. You stop needing their acknowledgement to validate what happened to you. You stop requiring the other person's agreement before you're allowed to feel the way you feel. This is not stubbornness. This is the end of a very expensive habit. And researchers studying emotional development across the lifespan have consistently found that women in midlife show higher rates of what psychologists call self-authorization, the ability to define their own experience without external confirmation. You didn't need their permission, you just stopped asking for it. Fifth, your priorities reorganized without your consent. There's a psychological phenomenon that Erik Erikson described in his theory of adult development as generativity versus stagnation. In midlife, most people shift from building their identity for others to consolidating what actually matters to them. For women, this often arrives without warning. One day, you're fine with the dinner party you don't want to go to. The next day, the thought of going makes you feel something close to grief. Not because anything happened. Because your brain has quietly finished a calculation. It's been running for years. Time is finite. Energy is finite. And your nervous system, having spent decades allocating both toward other people's comfort, has started to reallocate. This isn't selfishness. It's what developmental psychologists call the integrity stage, where women begin to invest in the relationships, experiences, and parts of themselves that carry actual meaning, rather than the ones that simply carry expectation. The people who fall away in this process are almost always the ones who were never there for you. They were there for the version of you that performed. When you stop performing, some people don't know what to do with you. And that's not your problem to solve. Sixth, you got better at reading the pattern underneath the behavior. One of the more disorienting things that happens to women in their late 40s is that they start seeing the same pattern wearing different faces. The colleague who micromanages is running the same emotional script as the parent who never believed in them. The friend who competes with every piece of good news is operating from the same place as the ex who needed to be the most successful person in the room. The family member who guilts you for not calling is using the same mechanism as the manager who guilts you for not working late. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And more importantly, you stop needing to diagnose each person individually. Research on cognitive pattern recognition shows that by midlife, humans have processed enough social data to identify structural similarities across situations much faster than younger adults. The brain is doing what it always does, finding efficiency, grouping like experiences, building predictive models. For women, this shows up as a kind of social clarity. You know what this person is going to do before they do it. Not because you're cynical, because you've seen this exact dynamic 20 times, and you know how it ends. Withdrawing from those situations is not giving up on people. It's choosing not to audition for a role in a play where you already know the last act. It's not about them. It's about who you become without them. There's a particular kind of expansion that happens when you stop giving your energy to people and situations that have never deserved it. It's not dramatic. It doesn't feel like liberation the way movies suggest. It's quieter than that, slower. You notice you have more to say in conversations that matter, that you laugh more easily in rooms where no one is watching for you to get it wrong, that certain mornings feel lighter than you expected, that the anxiety you'd been carrying was tied to maintaining access to people who didn't actually wish you well. A 2021 study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that women who report high relationship selectivity in midlife, meaning they have fewer but more intentional relationships, show significantly lower rates of perceived stress, higher measures of psychological well-being, and stronger scores on what researchers call eudaimonic flourishing. The sense that your life is being lived according to your own values rather than someone else's expectations. Fewer people, more presence, less performance. This is what the pulling back has always been moving toward. Not isolation, not bitterness, not the hardening that people accuse you of. A life that finally has room in it. You're not becoming harder to love. You're becoming harder to deceive. And that is not the same thing.